danger. And as I gathered the data as a physician does about the patient, and then I prognosticated, I honestly don't understand. I don't understand how we're still here. No one talks about it. It's as if we've all gone insane. And yet, we've survived for, I don't know how long we've been on Earth, 3 million years, 1 million years, we don't really know. But there's a gland above the kidney called the adrenal gland. It has a cortex and a medulla. In the medulla is produced adrenaline. If you're being chased by a bull, the adrenaline pumps out. And you've all felt this when you're frightened. Your pulse goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your blood sugar goes up, and you can jump a fence 6 feet high to get away from the bull. And that's how we've survived, because of the adrenal gland. What's happened to our adrenal glands? Have they atrophied? Like Jack Kennedy's did, because he had Addison's disease and he had to be treated with cortisone all the time. Or is it because it's terribly hard to look into the future to see a distant threat which might actually happen tonight, but which we'd rather not think about? If you put rats in a cage and threaten them with a lethal situation, they tend to run away and do something irrelevant to that which threatens them. It's called displacement activity. Or manic denial. Look at the back page of the New York Times today, front section, all covered with these models looking desperately anorectic, wearing the most extraordinary costumes, or gourmet food. What are we doing? And it's this country that is determining the fate of the Earth. I organised a conference from my Nuclear Policy Research Institute at Picantico, the Rockefeller estate up in upstate New York. I got the money. I asked General Cartwright to chair the first day and to speak. He said he would. Now, if I got Cartwright and some Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Russians would come, and they agreed they would come, to sit for 3 days with no media and talk about why they are threatening to blow up the planet and destroy 30 million species with which we cohabit the planet. And then I stupidly, for some reason, rang the Defence Department and spoke to Gordon England, who was another Secretary of Defence under Rumsfeld. And Cartwright sort of disappeared. You know how people don't answer your phone calls? And clearly Rumsfeld, who is a sociopath, sent the message down and Cartwright didn't do it. I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. And there's Murdoch anaesthetising everyone with absolute garbage on Fox, who is a fellow countryman of mine, who created my career. In 1971-72, when I started talking about fallout from the French test in the Pacific Ocean, he put front page editorials quoting me in the Australian, the national newspaper. He created my career. Then in 1975, when I started talking about uranium and nuclear power, he blackballed me, and I thought he was quite progressive in those days. I thought either he's had a psychotic breakdown or he's got a cerebral tumour. Maybe it was the former. But I don't know if any of you ever saw an interview with a man called Dennis Potter. Bobby, Paul, do you know who Dennis Potter was? He was a Brit who understood how brilliant television was and how it could be used to educate people. He wrote a play called The Singing Detective. Who was in that play? Michael who? A brilliant actor. Did anyone see The Singing Detective? Yeah, who was the actor? Brilliant. It was a series. A guy had terrible psoriasis, you know, that awful skin rash, and he was in hospital a bit psychotic, and he was... Anyway, they interviewed Potter at the end of his life. He was, I don't know, in his 50s or early 60s. He had pancreatic carcinoma and he was dying. He also had psoriasis, and people with psoriasis develop the most awful arthritis, much worse than rheumatoid. His hands were like claws. He was being interviewed by a BBC commentator, and in one hand was clasped a bottle of morphine, a flask that he was swinging all the time because of his pain. In the other hand was clasped a cigarette, and he was smoking. And he said, "I'm dying." He said, "I can drink cream." and he was smoking. And he said, "There's a blossom tree outside the window that's the blossomingest blossom I've ever seen." And suddenly he was seeing the beauty and sanctity of life. And he called his cancer Rupert. And he said he's the most dangerous man in the world. And this interview would have been 18 or 20 years ago. And I would repeat that statement. How dare he broadcast to 2/3 of the world's population, keeping them in absolute ignorance. He owns 75% of the newspapers in my country, Australia. How dare he? He anaesthetises people. You know when you sit in front of television and your brain goes into alpha wave activity and you sort of relax, and if you're really tired you go to sleep? And what happens is, in that state, all this stuff that comes in, like your hemorrhoid cream and all the awful things they add, erection stuff and dry vaginas and, I mean, things we never used to talk about, and it's all on television, advertising all this rhubarb. It all goes through the left brain very fast and lodges in the mid brain. You don't have time to think or critically think. And then, of course, you are anaesthetised but conditioned to buy all this stuff. And this awful people, Rush Limbaugh should be banned. I don't believe in freedom of speech when people lie. If I lied in medicine, I would be deregistered. It is not just inappropriate to lie about scientific facts, it's immoral. Or shall I say evil? Evil. Thou shalt not lie. Things are so grim now, and the way scientists have given the corporations their knowledge and wisdom to do the most dreadful things. We are in a serious situation. Global warming is upon us. Nothing is being done about it. And how dare people say they don't believe in global warming? It's like saying, well, I don't believe I've got a nose. And I would say, I can see you've got a nose and I can feel your nose. You've got a nose. No, I don't believe I've got a nose. Yet, if those people get sick, who do they come to? Me. I've taken out lots of appendixes. I would fix their appendix. They'd probably believe in me in extremists, that I would know what I was doing, because everyone has to come to a doctor eventually. But it's absolutely, I can't think of an adjective to describe it, or an adverb, or whatever it's called, more than irresponsible to lie about the planet, which is in the intensive care unit, in an acutely critical situation, and it's dying. If we don't fix global warming, by the end of the century it's going to be 4 degrees centigrade hotter. We won't survive. We can't live at those temperatures. And we see the extreme weather events, which were predicted when I wrote my book, If You Love This Planet, in 91. It's all happening. Oh, but we don't really believe it. What do you mean you don't believe it? Believing? Have we gone back to the Dark Ages where people didn't believe in science? Yes. Is it because when people get frightened they become superstitious? Yes. Why did the witches get killed? People get frightened and they get superstitious, and you see it here now. You know, the people who believe in the rapture, that they are praying for the end times to come and everyone will be raptured up to heaven to meet Jesus, for God's sake, all in their nightgowns. There are paintings of people rapturing up to heaven in their nighties. So, yeah, global warming. I mean, Queensland, the size of Germany and France together, is dry, drought-ridden. We had floods in Queensland that flooded 2/3 of the state, never before heard of in the history of Australia. Well, we've only been there 200 years, but the Aborigines have been there for 40,000 years. We don't count them. I could go on. The ocean levels are rising. We're worried about immigrants. You wait. We're going to have millions of ecological refugees coming to all our countries to escape the rising sea levels. The glaciers are melting. The Ganges is going to dry up. What are people going to drink? The oceans will rise. Bangladesh, millions of people live on a delta. They're all going to drown. The Anopheles mosquito is going to move further north up to Seattle and British Columbia as the earth warms. Malaria epidemics, eastern equine encephalitis, dengue fever epidemics. The flora and fauna are threatened, the polar bears are threatened. The Arctic ice is melting, but that's good because guess what? There's a lot of oil up there. We've got to stop drilling for oil. We've got to stop burning oil. We've got to stop chopping the mountains off and digging up coal. We've got to stop using electricity. We waste 25% of the electricity we use in this country. And nuclear power only generates 20% of the electricity. Americans must not continue to have a sense of entitlement. You don't have a sense, you mustn't leave your lights on. You've got to turn your lights off as you walk from room to room, turn off your lights. When you go to bed, turn off your television, your DVD, your electric carving knives, all the flashing lights, turn them off. When I was a child, we didn't have any of this. We only had a little tiny radio set. I was born in 1938. I'm ancient. But we survived all right. Well, Mozart and Shakespeare wrote by candlelight. Ooh, candlelight? I'm writing an article for the International Herald Tribune now about the future of nuclear power, and I ended it by saying that and said, the editor wrote back and said, well, you don't want to encourage people to think they have to go to candlelight again. Well, what's wrong with candlelight? That's right. That's right. We're so spoilt. We take everything for granted. Never use a clothes dryer again. Hang your clothes out outside, but I hear that in some suburbs it's rude to hang your underpants and brassiers outside because Mrs. Brown next door might see your underpants. How ridiculous. We always hang our clothes outside in the street, and in the winter hang them up by the furnace. But don't use clothes dryers, because who makes clothes dryers? General Electric. And what do they make? Nuclear power plants. And what do they make? Nuclear weapons. And what do they make? Nuclear missiles. And what are they doing? They're arming space with nuclear power plants, reactors, and weapons. A wicked, wicked company. So, you know what? We can fix global warming because there's enough wind west of the Mississippi to supply the country with 3 times the amount of electricity you currently use. Yeah, the grids are no good. You've got to fix the grids. Ooh, that will require a lot of money to fix the grids. Ooh, people might have to see some electric wires going across their property. Ooh, windmills. I don't like the look of those windmills. Too bloody bad. Better to have windmills than nuclear power plants, which are cancer factories, and which over time will induce epidemics of cancer, leukemia and genetic disease forevermore from the radioactive waste leaking into the food, contaminating the food. People waking up in their morning, their babies born deformed, like the babies at Chernobyl. Do you want to see the picture of the babies at Chernobyl? This is the New York Academy of Sciences report. You've got to all read it. Over 1 million people have died so far from Chernobyl in 25 years, and that accident is ongoing for the rest of time. 40% of Europe is radioactive. I don't eat European food because I don't know what's radioactive and what's not. If I eat cesium in some food or Spanish olive oil, I might get cancer. Have I got to stop?
Do you want me to hold your mic?
No. Yeah, I don't know.
And if it's okay with you, we'd like to open it for questions.
Yeah, in a minute.
Okay.
I haven't
finished. You can let me know.
I'm on a roll.
You are.
These, you can come up later. These look like thalidomide babies. Do you remember when pregnant women took thalidomide? they've got no limbs or that they're grossly deformed. There are homes full